Welcome back, everyone. I'm here with Scott Martin, fellow South African living in the United States. He is a lot of things, actually. He's a professional photographer. He lives in the Adirondack Mountains in Pennsylvania. Yes?
Uh, n- yes and no. Like I live in Pennsylvania, but I do a lot of work in the Adirondack Mountains, which
Thank
is
you for
north,
correcting me.
yeah, north of us,
Ah,
in
okay.
New York State. Yeah,
There we go. Okay. So he lives close to the mountains.
yeah.
Yeah, he does, like I mentioned, professional photographer, general outdoorsman, snowboarder, and just all round cool guy. And he's been kind enough to sit down with me for another episode of the Everyday Awesomeness podcast. So, Scott, welcome, and thank you very much for joining me.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's my pleasure. And so to kick things off, in your own words, I think
Mm.
would be interesting for me especially, and hopefully for the people watching. Uh, who is? Can you give us a quick, just a quick overview in your own words? Who is Scott Martin? What do you sort of just briefly? Where did you come from? How did you end up where you are now? And
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a husband, photographer, traveler, kind of dirtbag traveler sometimes. And yeah, make a living through photography. Um, and yeah, like you said, live here in the States, originally from South Africa. Grew up in Cape Town, and yeah, I get to go home quite frequently. My wife and I go back kind of once a year, which we get a lot from. Yeah, it's a hard place to leave. Um, but yeah, so I work here in the States as a photographer, and primarily shoot a kind of a mix of things, but it's brand work or commercial work for some outdoor brands. And then I do some travel and tourism photography for some of the tourism boards kind of spread out throughout the States.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of your work online. I think, which is
Mm.
how we connected originally before I harassed you to to come on the podcast with me. But also being both from South Africa, I think we immediately, that's sort of at least one fairly strong connection on one level.
Yeah.
Um, so going from South Africa to the US, how did that come about?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I never ever grew up kind of like wanting to live in the States. It was never something I was like, oh, one day I want to move there and live there. It happened naturally. My wife is American, and essentially that's
Uh-huh.
what brought me over here. I was I'd worked as a river guide for a long time.
Hmm.
Um, and I would work pretty much like the summers in mostly South Africa. I did a little bit of international kind of guiding, but like I'd work in South Africa for the summers, and then at the time in my life, I really wanted to travel internationally, and working at a summer camp in the States was like a great way to get over to the States to kind
Yeah.
of get where really. The options were kind of like go to the UK or go to the States, and I wasn't really interested in going to the UK. And yeah, as you know, having a South African passport is rather restricting.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
Yeah.
getting able to come and work in the States was like a great fit. And I ended up doing multiple seasons um, here in the States, and ended up meeting my now wife there. Yeah, and so
While you were guiding, or
yeah, actually, while I was working in the States, like I ended up working at a summer camp. I did a couple of seasons doing like outdoor programs for them.
mm,
Uh, and then photography kind of slowly crept in, and the camp had me come back. I'd actually said to them, cool, I'm done. Like, I need to move on and do other things in my life.
mm,
Um, and they a year or two later they phoned me and said like, "Hey, will you come and work in the marketing department?" And so I went back and ended up meeting my wife Ashley, and then she traveled to South Africa and for 3 months and stayed 6, and we came back to the States because it was the only kind of opportunity I could to get back into the country. And
Okay.
Yeah, and then eventually we kind of got to this point after a couple of years of doing that, saying like, okay, we either need to break up or get married and see how this goes. And we decided to get married. Yeah, here
That's
we are, 13
sounds
years later. Yeah,
wow. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
yeah,
Congrats on that. Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. That's. I mean, that sounds very much like me and mine and my wife. She
Mhm.
being Swiss and me being South African. We also back and forth, and then eventually we thought, okay, well, we either the same thing. We're going to both sort of not early 20s anymore. Actually,
Right.
not late 20s anymore either. More like mid 30s. Like, are we really interested in doing a long term sort of or long obviously long term but long distance
Yeah.
relationship, and then maybe it doesn't go somewhere, maybe it doesn't. So we thought, okay,
Right.
well, let's let's actually do what we both want to do, take this thing head on. And we actually lived
Yeah.
in South Africa for the first bit, and then once we had our son, we it was always on the sort of on the horizon. Like once you had to start going to school, you'd
Right.
have to. We don't have to, but in our minds, you'd have to choose one or the other because the systems and the languages and the cultures are so
Uh,
different. And
sure.
then, yeah, and then it ended up happening a bit sooner that we had to make a decision. And then we thought, with our support network and my family in South Africa, that we could always. It's easier to go back if we stayed in Switzerland and decided that's not working for us versus waiting longer to come to Switzerland. So we've been in
Yeah.
Switzerland now for 3 or 4 years. But yeah, and that's
Nice.
why I can relate
Yeah.
very much to
Yeah.
that. But that actually, so you touched there actually on what was pretty much leading into my next question. So thanks for that. Is um, so photography, what you're doing now for a living, how did that come about? Were you someone that sort of you picked up a camera when you were 3 years old and you were always into it, like Tiger Woods with his golf clubs, or were you sort of was it something that entered your life at a later stage, or well, how did
Yeah.
that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's looking back at it now, it definitely there was a spark there from a young age.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like probably I must have been like I don't know 10, 13-ish, and my mom would go shop and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna come with so I can go to the local like CNA, I think was the shop, the stationery shop that had all the
Yeah,
magazines." And she'd go shop and I'd go stand there and flip through like Zigzag, which is a surfing magazine,
yeah,
and
I
then
remember.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then Getaway magazine, which was like the
Mm,
nature travel. And then she would come and find me and then would leave and go home. And From that, I think just like visually images always kind of there was something a bit of a spark there for me. And Yeah, I started like river guiding on the Orange River, which is on the border of like South Africa and Namibia.
yeah.
Um, Pretty young age. I don't know how it happened, but my parents kind of allowed me to go work up there when I was 14 years old on my school
Wow.
holidays.
Okay.
Yeah, and then kind of I loved it so much. It was like the only thing I wanted to do. And Yeah, probably when I was about 15 or 16, I started to take the family little point and shoot film camera with
Yeah.
purely just to document essentially like the spaces I was going to, and I
Mm,
was just amazed at where I was and what I was doing and the people I was meeting. And Yeah, and that kind of fueled the fire a little bit. I remember saving all my tip money so I could have the film processed. And then you get it really excited. But Yeah, and so
yeah.
started kind of really being drawn to photography. And as kind of life went on, I kind of essentially dropped out of college. I was studying some tourism kind of like certificate, or it
Okay.
wasn't a degree or some sort of tourism thing. I wasn't really invested in it, and I was like, cool, convince my parents again. I'm gonna take just give me a year off. Let me like just find my feet here. I just finished
Yeah.
high school. And yeah, I still like really, really loved the thought of being a photographer. Didn't have a clue how it was going to happen. But photography had always kind of been, I think, like a part of my life.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. But
yeah.
then, so, but so your mind didn't go to actually being more, it went more towards being a photographer, not being a river guide.
Yeah. S- Kind of. There was like a pretty like good transition. I mean, essentially, I guided for a long time, and I must have been just finished high school, so maybe 19.
Mm,
Um, Started guiding more and more and more, and ended up a good friend of mine who had also kind of got into guiding. Him and I connected really well. His name's Anton, and he's a great filmmaker now in South Africa. But him and I
okay.
actually ended up buying like a handy cam, like a Sony little handy cam.
Yeah.
And we would run around, we would share it, and we would be like, okay, you got a trip, you use it, then I'll use it, and then you use it. And we would film the river trips and then make like a video as you do, and then
Yeah.
sell it back to the clients.
Yeah, because
Um,
I mean, then there were no mobile phones, or at least mobile phones with cameras. I mean, that was really
right,
at
right. Yeah.
the different
Yeah.
time.
I mean, this thing is I mean, he still has it, which is great. It's like it's
Wow. Okay.
quite a laugh. Yeah. So we used to just film everything we pretty much could. And it was a great way to make a little bit of extra money. And luckily the company that we were working at saw it as a bit of a marketing
Yeah,
opportunity
for
for
sure.
yeah, so they let us do it. And I mean there were some seasons I think we made more money selling these like terrible DVDs to our clients than we did guiding. But
That's a good
yeah,
side
so,
hustle.
yeah. And yeah, and then kind of that evolved and the river guiding kind of expanded a bit and I started to get invited on a few expeditions. Like I got to go and join these guys that paddled the Amazon River source to sea and they had me come in.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, they had me come and join them for a couple weeks on like pretty much the source, the whitewater section, to document like film and
So
photo.
was that mostly, was that more like moving pictures, like film, or stills as well?
It was both.
But okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was kind of both. And at the time I was like growing my kayaking, whitewater kayaking kind of skills and
Mm,
um yeah, so it kind of was like this little package I think I had going for myself of like, hey, I can kayak or be on the river and shoot video and photos. And
yeah, for sure. I mean, that I think, at least in my experience as well, someone who can has done, I mean, who can mountain bike quite well, who does some trail running, who's just generally sort of outdoor sport active,
mm,
and you have that, you understand how the sport, how the discipline works, and you can um, do the photography side. So you're being able to anticipate how
yep.
something is going to play out, and being in the right place at the right time, and also being comfortable being in that situation. Not if you're only a photographer or a videographer and you're in that situation and you're not comfortable in this whitewater environment, or with in a surfing environment where waves are breaking over you, or on a biking trail, then you're gonna be fully engrossed dealing with that versus just being
Mm,
focused on taking the picture. So there's a massive amount of value in that. In my
yeah.
um, well, opinion or experience, sometimes people or clients, once they get the results or they see how you work, they appreciate it. But sometimes people can forget that a little bit.
Right, right, right. Yeah, absolutely. I often think you can see photographers who do the thing, do the sport or the activity that also shoot it. There's always like a little bit of a different perspective kind of added.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. Um,
Okay,
but
cool. So that sort of then yeah. That sorry, was this before you did the summer camps?
this was kind of around the same time. Like I was like kind of done with the summer camps, wanted to be done with them. These other opportunities were coming up. And kind of around this time, I really wanted to pursue photography. I knew that like I couldn't be a river guide for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
As fun as the lifestyle is, where every day is a Saturday, so it's a hard lifestyle to leave. But I knew I was like, cool, I can't do this forever, and I'd really be doing it for a while. But
Okay.
yeah, I got a few more opportunities. I got to go to Norway, and paddle
Wow.
to
Okay.
yeah, like these friends of mine. Another like really good paddler and photographer, Rob Wilson. He's South African actually and lives in Norway with his partner Ina. They were
Oh.
working on a guidebook to these two rivers, and we paddled them source to sea, and kind of similar thing. They were like, "Hey, you have this skill set. Would you want to come with?" And of course, I was like, "Absolutely." Um,
No doubt.
and I loved it. It was kind of breaking away from the commercial guiding and a bit more into
Mm.
like photography and expedition life. And around that same time, I was wrapping up with the summer camps, and Ashley, my now wife, had like come into my life, and um, kind of around then we decided like, okay, we're gonna get married and live in
Hmm.
the States. And that timing was kind of this perfect transition for me to be like, all right, I'm literally leaving country, South Africa, to go live in the States. This is like a great time to like just completely focus on photography.
On photography.
Yeah.
So, so it was always clear that you were gonna live in the States once you were married.
Yeah. Yeah. We kind of like discussed it, and we're like, hey, let's just start there. It'll be easier. Um, I think once we get our feet on the ground, to live and work in the States, and then, if
Mm.
we can always kind of go back to South
Yeah,
Africa.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Given yeah, I mean currency strength and that type of thing, and also yeah, and my experience at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, you had some very cool adventures and stuff.
Yeah.
Getting up to that. And your wife, is she working? Not working?
Yeah. Yeah. She works. She's a nurse practitioner, which is kind of the equivalent to like a GP. So she's
Okay.
got a master's degree in nursing. So she's kind of like works under a doctor, but she can prescribe, I guess, drugs
Medicine.
in the
Okay.
States. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard the term, but I'm not familiar. I mean, I'm not familiar with it
Yeah.
personally, but yeah, I've heard the term. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um. So as a South African like me,
Yeah.
you obviously didn't grow up with your feet in the snow. Was it something you discovered there once you moved there with your wife, or was it also part of the summer camps or something?
Yeah.
How did you get into to snowboarding and to snow sports?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely didn't grow up with it like you said. It definitely came once I kind of moved to the States, and a good friend of mine, while I was literally like the day before I left, he came to my house, but like the day before I left to catch my flight to like immigrate, and he was like, "Here's a snowboard, here's some pants, and here's some boots. They probably won't fit you, but at least you'll have something." And so I kind of came over with those, and
Hmm.
arrived in winter, here in the States. And I'd been traveling so much, I essentially had like 6 years of summer back to back. Um, and like I remember I arrived at like JFK in like flip-flops and a jeans and like a
Yeah.
puffy. And this woman was like, "You're gonna want some shoes, son." Like, no, 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 I'll be fine. Anyway, yeah, a rude awakening to winter. And
Yeah.
yeah, just having no idea how to kind of exist in winter and how to layer and the right clothes to wear.
Yeah,
Um,
it's different. It's different. But I
yeah,
mean, I think, um, yeah, I mean, well, I think the other countries around the world as well, or two. But as South Africans, especially like if you enjoy the outdoors
yeah,
and summer. I mean, I live in my flip flops as well in summer
right.
here in Switzerland. They really that most people associated with if you're on holiday, and I
Yeah,
often in high summer because I'm not where I work here is also more. it's more tourism based. It's
Yeah.
bikes in summer, skis in winters.
Yeah.
Winter, obviously, I wear shoes, but in summer, it's not that formal. In high summer, I can get away with some wearing flip flops at
Yeah.
work, but people are still they and even in early or early winter or early spring, late winter, when it's
Yeah.
quite cold still, but it's sunny out, I wear my flip
Yeah.
flops. Even
Yeah.
as long
Yeah.
as my legs and my body's warm, it's fine. And people
Yeah.
they find it strange.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And the funny
Um,
thing is, our son now, we've been to South Africa a few times, obviously as
yeah.
well. Like I mean, he's really Swiss.
Yeah.
I mean, I speak Afrikaans to him. My wife speaks Swiss German to him, but 90% of his day is Swiss German because that's just where we live, and the grandparents here are Swiss German, so that's his language. But we communicate in Afrikaans, and sometimes he speaks back in Swiss German to me, but he understands
Yeah.
Afrikaans. But he's properly the barefoot thing he loves. So he's also
Yeah.
at the kindergarten or something. He's the one in bare feet, and all the other kids
Yeah.
are in shoes and stuff.
That's
So
awesome.
as soon as he gets home, also he wants to take the shoes off. So that's quite
Yeah.
cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, that's yeah. So winter, I think,
Yeah.
winter in the Northern Hemisphere is very different to winter. Well, depending on where you
Yeah.
live, to our
Yeah.
winter
Yeah.
in South Africa and the Southern Hemisphere. But it's something I really embrace and I really enjoy now. I mean,
Right.
especially we live really in the mountains here, and it's part of winter life. I mean, we can
Yeah.
go. You can put the skis on at the front door, and mostly this winter has been a little bit different,
Yeah. Yeah.
but mostly yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot to learn, but I really enjoy it. But
Yeah.
I always joke with my wife and with colleagues or friends here that as South Africans we used to the sun, but snow is
Right.
something that we don't know. So they find it like when I tell them that South Africans take the day off to go look at snow, they
Right.
for them it's like, why would you do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
but in the opposite, I tell them it's for us as South Africans. It's always funny when Europeans come to holiday in South Africa and they want to sit in the sun on a stoop on a terrace at a restaurant and have lunch. And as a South African, you were looking for shade. You want to sit in
Yeah.
shade. So we know sun. We grew up with it. We don't
Yeah.
need more of it. And then so we enjoy snow. And then when they go there, they want to see the sun. So it's a bit like
Yeah.
a situation like that. But
Yeah.
it's quite a funny thing.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
um, yeah. Sorry, you
Yeah.
want to say?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was gonna say the snow. I kind of realized quickly. I was like, if I don't embrace it and get out into it, just because I'm someone that enjoys to be outside, I was like, I'm gonna really lose my mind during the dark, cold winter months.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so snowboarding was like a really easy transition, kind of growing up skateboarding and surfing. I was like, all right, well, snowboarding looks incredible. And so kind of dove into that a bit and luckily had some friends to really show me the ropes. And yeah, and
Awesome.
then
Yeah.
as soon as I saw splitboarding, I was just like, I need to try that. Um, and
I was actually gonna ask how you got into the splitboarding or ski touring.
yeah,
Um,
just I think just it's kind of it's maybe like 2018 or 17, like seeing like people out there, and I was like, wow, you can like hike up the mountain any way you want, kind of as long as it's safe, but
mm,
like, and ride back down, and that seemed way more appealing to me than kind of just riding the lift at the resort. And yeah, I kind of managed to find a used kind of setup relatively cheap, and it was in really bad condition, but I was like, okay, this is great. It's like something to get started on. And yeah,
yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
did it once and I was like, all right, this is it. This is like really what I want to do.
And you had some, excuse me, you had some friends or colleagues or people you knew who did ski touring or touring, and then you
Yep.
you hit them up and just went for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. 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 And it's been yeah, I mean, they were great. They like I look at where they took me the first time I went out, and it was like, really, really mellow. And I, of course, thought it was like, you
Yeah,
know, the biggest thing in the world. But
yeah,
yeah, just the whole day, I was like, this is great. Like you get to be just the whole kind of thing of being in the mountains, moving slowly.
it's
Was just
amazing. Yeah, I mean, I
yeah,
find it. I think yeah. So I pretty much started around the same time. Actually, I had a um, yeah, a friend or not well, family, but married on family who works in the ski industry who invited me on a ski trip. But always I saw it in the magazines on television,
Yeah.
but always thought it would be awesome. And then first, obviously, learned skiing with the resort or lifted version, and then yeah, went with them, and obviously, again, like you say, you think it's like this super like it's obviously amazing, but this like hectic terrain, and then now
Right.
with all the experience that you gain, you look back and you're like, oh, it's like that was so mellow. But I
Right.
mean, in a way, it's like growing in photography. You know, when you start off and you learn and you think, ah, these are. I mean, yeah, I can even look at images last year or the year before that I did.
Right.
At the time, you're thinking, oh, that's actually I'm very proud of that. And then as you
Yeah.
progress, you look back in a few years and you're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm like, I hope no one sees that. I might take it down.
But I mean, in a way, that's the I think generally that's the beauty of anything in life or life in general. You know, you never stop learning, you never
Yeah.
stop growing, and for me, that's also what makes people so interesting. You know, I have a way of looking at the world and the way I experience the world, and like yourself, someone who's done a lot of traveling, I think you realize quite soon how big the world is and how and it's not by being well being ignorant, growing up not being ignorant, just being ignorant by design in the sense of where you grew up is that your frame of reference. But when you
Right.
travel, you realize, like moving, especially here to Switzerland, it's not only it's another country, but it's another language, another culture.
Mm.
Um, and it's people just do things differently, and it's the
Yeah.
same in the States or in any other part of the world, and it doesn't make it wrong. It's just different, you know. And then
Right. Right.
it just broadens your horizons and makes you grow as a person, which for me is
Yeah.
I find it's it's not always easy or not always without its challenges, but I find
Right.
it yeah. I mean, I've embraced it over time. I also done a lot of traveling, so
Yeah.
I find it very liberating, very refreshing, and yeah, I find it awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely I think incredible just adding a new perspective that you can kind of look at your life and be like, okay, well, maybe I don't have it that bad, or wow, these people far less are doing far more than I could ever dream of doing. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
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 absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
No, that's really cool. Um, okay, so if I can move along quickly,
Yeah.
um, you mentioned you do a lot of work for brands, obviously
Mm,
which I see online. Is that something? Obviously, you enjoy doing it,
mm,
which actually leads me to my main question: is besides doing the brand work, do you have sort of other aspects in photography that you enjoy doing?
mm.
Other
Yeah.
genres like still life or landscape or
Mm, yeah.
concerts or I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of essentially just love being behind the camera, no matter where I am or what I'm doing. And I know like some folks are like, oh, you need to niche down and like choose a avenue and like stick to that.
Mm,
And I'm kind of like, hey, I just like operating the camera and like documenting things. So yeah, I love to like kind of shoot as much as I can and as often as I can. It's definitely like a passion of mine. But
but
yeah, maybe
are you without the camera? Are you generally you seem like quite a people person? Am I wrong?
yeah, I definitely like to like be around people, but then I certainly do like to like I'll get to my limit and I'm like, okay, I need to go and like be introverted for a while. And
Okay.
just like kind of reset. Yeah, I'd say it's like maybe like a 50-50
Yeah.
kind of set. But yeah, I mean I as I've this photography journey's like grown, like I some people always ask like what is the thing like you love to shoot, and I really enjoy shooting people, if it's like
Mm,
portraits or people doing the thing that they love to do, you know,
yeah.
professional athletes, whatever it is, like just connecting with people um is what gets me, I think, like pretty psyched, and then being able to
Okay.
document and really just it could be. anyone doing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that process of when you on a job, or maybe it's a personal project even, to from where you're meeting someone for the first time, or meeting on set or on site, not on set, maybe
Yeah.
obviously it's a bit more slightly different, but do you strike up that rapport with someone quite easily, to get them at ease, or just comfortable to be in front of the
Yeah.
camera?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think I'm a pretty like curious person.
Hmm.
And like I'm always interested in hearing people's stories. And I think a lot of that comes from traveling and having
Yeah.
like river guided and
Ah, of
worked,
course. Yeah.
worked with all sorts of people and met all sorts of people and yeah, I just find it like really really interesting. Just people's stories, and then adding like a photo of that person on top of that
Hmm.
is kind of like brings a lot to me. Yeah, it's kind of nice. Some of the brands that I do work for, I've really brought some of like my kind of outdoor skills to the
Hmm.
job. So for instance, like NRS is like a big kind of whitewater paddling everything brand here in the States. And it's great that I can go to them and be like, hey, we can go sea kayaking, we can go rafting, we can go whitewater kayaking, and I can do those things and also feel comfortable with the camera and kind of produce kind of images that they then use for their catalogs. And
Yeah.
then yeah, and then on top of that, getting to meet the people that I'm working with
Mm.
is yeah, obviously connects quite a big with me. Yeah, and I think
Okay.
there's yeah, as a photographer, having to get people comfortable with you fairly quickly is can be tricky, and you don't
Yeah.
hit it out the park every time. I think the one something that's in my favor about being in the States is I'll open my mouth and I sound different. So that's immediately like a good
Conversation starter.
yeah, exactly. But I think too, especially when you're working, um, I remember someone told me years ago as I was starting out, they were like, "Hey, just don't be an asshole when you work with people. Like, it's simple. Like,
Yeah.
just yeah, be yourself and keep it cool." And
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I think there's like a lot of value to that of like, hey, you don't need to be like the prima donna photographer. That's
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I think in that sense, at least in my experience, or things have also changed a lot in the photographic industry. And you also, you got into it still in the film days when
Mhm.
I got into it, and then the move to digital. But coming
Mhm.
from the film days, things were very. It had to be, because of the expenses involved and the slower process.
Sure.
Things had to be planned out and more not well staged, or just planned out,
Mhm.
and things you couldn't be so spontaneous about it a lot of the time, like we can
Right.
be now in the digital era. And now things have progressed so far along that it moved almost completely away from having these, like you mentioned, like this prima donna photographer who walks onto set
Right.
and is like the asshole who tells everyone what to do, how warm his coffee should be, and have 10
Right.
assistants, to the one person band who does not only the photography but also the kayaking and this and that.
Right.
But in that, it's also developed to a point where brands really appreciate the more spontaneous, more natural imagery, more real imagery. Not using 100 lights
Right.
and shooting a rapid, but doing it 100 times with different
Mhm.
lights and things. I think there are still maybe a place for that, and people who do that. I think I can remember a project vaguely a couple of years ago, but just at least in the last year or two, and maybe longer, a lot of brands prefer that
Yeah.
really more natural, real, raw brand
Yeah.
type
Yeah. Yeah.
imagery, which
Yeah.
ironically is easier to produce on a technical level, but it takes a
Mhm.
lot more on a personal
Yeah.
and a connecting with people
Mhm.
level, in
Right.
my
Right.
experience.
Yeah. Like I found some of the like some of the jobs I've done, a lot of it's like, cool, I just need to like connect with these people and I can probably shoot, we'll be together for 2 days. And in my head, I'm like, cool, I'm going to shoot everything I need to shoot in the last like 4 hours that we're together.
Mm.
And I'm going to spend the first day just kind of like breaking down some barriers and connecting and learning about who they are.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then
It's so
I
so
find like,
important.
yeah, and then you're like, okay, cool guys, we need to just do this. And then people are willing to, they're part of the team and they're like, cool, we want to do this. And um,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's an
uh,
interesting process. But speaking of that, so moving but yeah, but you, so but the transition from film to digital for you is quite a smooth transition. It wasn't I think a film era was also a little bit more in the beginning of your photographic journey.
right.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
once you got more into the professional arena, it was pretty much digital, like
yeah,
myself.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I've got like stacks of these photo albums that are on my shelf from like the days of like river guiding and all this
Mm,
film stuff. And it always, especially on a river guide salary, buying a digital camera at the time felt like this
yeah,
like
it's so
massive,
expensive.
like yeah. And but yeah, it kind of worked out really well as like I was like moving into wanting to pursue the photography. Digital was totally just taking over, and which also made just like the learning process way quicker, which
Mm.
was
Yeah, I
fantastic. And
actually, I mean, it's actually quite a good point that you're making. Is that I listened to another podcast earlier this week actually, where the point was brought up that there's a lot of people sort of one of the trends at the moment is to go back to film or
right,
shoot film like you would obviously would know.
yeah,
And but this was also an older guy, and he did a lot of his work in the film era and has been shooting digital for the last, I don't know,
mm,
probably more than 15 years. And he said film has some, obviously for him as a nostalgic value, but on a digital, once digital sort of took over, it allowed you to progress so much quicker because you could fail so much more.
yeah, yeah,
With film, like you would shoot a roll of film, it would take a day or two for it to get developed if you could do it quickly.
yeah.
You get the
Right,
film back, and then you would look at it. Then you could go back out and correct or learn from it.
right,
Whereas with digital, you're learning as you're going along. So you the level of progression on a
yeah,
personally when you as a photographer, it happens so much quicker, which I thought was quite a cool or quite a cool point.
yeah,
What
yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah,
making.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting seeing like the film kind of like come up again. I think it's great. I think it's great that there's like both and
Mm,
you can shoot with both. They each have their things, their pros and cons.
yeah.
Yeah, it is great that there's like this film resurgence.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just keeping an eye quickly on so we have
Yeah.
2 minutes. I'm going to start wrapping this up quickly. And then rather than making it the so what we spoke a bit earlier off camera as well, rather than carrying on forever, I'd rather do a follow-up podcast or follow-up
Cool. Oh,
conversation,
cool. Right
because
on. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
then it keeps it a bit more yeah, I think interesting for both of
Yeah.
us, and something something to do in future. Holding thumbs.
Cool.
Yeah, so cool. So just quickly, so yeah, moving on to wrap things up. Um, there's some how do you say, some more light-hearted questions. Like, are you a camera guy? A camera. What type of camera or what brand are you? Are you loyal to a
Uh,
brand, or you?
I use Nikon or Nikon, however you want to
Okay,
say
that's
it.
all I need to know. Moving
Okay.
on. Okay, yeah, cool. I thought, yeah, I mean, I don't know why, but some reason I thought you might also be a Sony shooter. But it's nice to hear
Uh,
you're shooting on Nikon
yeah,
or
like
Nikon.
I had a little Sony for a little bit, and I just couldn't like get into it, and I was like, cool, I'm good. I picked up like a Leica Q2, which is like a Leica point and shoot essentially,
Yeah,
just so I could separate like work a little bit
yeah,
from and just have something else that just operates
yeah,
different. And it's been like absolutely phenomenal to just have that little camera. And I take that everywhere with me.
yeah. But on
To
a professional level, Nikon or
Yeah,
Nikon.
yeah.
Do you say what do you say? Do you say Nikon or Nikon in the States?
I say both. I never know what people like want to say. So
Yeah. So just before the end, there we got what am I doing? Yeah. So okay, so you shoot with Nikon cameras.
Yep.
It's quite cool.
Yeah.
That's a plus for you
Yeah.
in my book.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I also shoot on what I did. I still shoot. Well, I got into photography in the film days by chance, shooting on Nikon, and then yeah,
Yep.
obviously just progressed with that. I've tried one or two other brands over the years,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think maybe it's the same with bicycles or with other things. Also, like if you know your hands, or you get used to the way the buttons are
Yeah.
laid out and things work, and
Yeah. 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 Yeah,
it's just
exactly. Yeah, I think for a minute there, I thought Nikon was like a dying breed of photographers. Um,
yeah.
but seems to be kind of coming back a bit. I mean, I love the equipment that I use. I also kind of see it as like, unless there's something super specific I need, like
Mm,
the cameras all just do the same thing, and it's how you kind of apply it to what you're doing. And
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think I also get caught up in the hype every now and again when something new gets released. Fortunately, I never have the money to buy the latest and the greatest.
right, right,
um, although, but and I've written a bit about this before actually, and spoken to a few people. Well, off camera, so I sound like a famous person. No, but the just spoken to a few people candidly about how, at the end of the day, whether it's your phone or a DSLR or whatever camera it is, it's the same square that you have to compose in.
right, right,
And so at the end of the day, I think for me, and I've thought about this a lot personally also over the years, that at the end of the day, I think the only reason you would choose a certain camera was with the end result in mind. Is it going to be in a billboard? Is it for print media? Do you need the
right,
high frame rate for a specific application, or flash sync speed if you're doing that type of thing?
right.
Um,
Yeah,
otherwise, whether it's your phone or whatever, it's the same square that you have to compose in.
yeah. I always like to say the best camera is the one you have on you. So
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah,
And
totally.
quite often, especially if you're moving light and fast, it's either
Right.
a smaller camera, or for me, often my my phone, just
Right.
because I don't have the opportunity to. And well, with ski touring, often I try to make an effort, but even then,
Yeah.
sometimes I have to go light and fast because I have to be back home either for work or family time, or if I'm ski touring with people, they're not waiting for you, so you're doing
Right.
pictures, but you still have to keep up. So you're
Right.
doing double duty.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
do
yeah, yeah.
like
Totally.
so. So now I've actually I've so for ski touring, what I often use is I've got a micro four thirds setup, the Panasonic G9,
Okay,
which I
right on.
which I like using. And I mean, the body it's lighter than your full frame Nikon mirrorless setup.
Yep.
Well, most mirrorless setups, obviously full frame mirrorless setups, but the big weight gains come with the lenses, which are just
Right, right, right.
they don't have to be so big, and you have a lot they have a lot more reach for the
Mhm.
same size essentially.
That's
And
true.
I've got prints hanging up in the house that are up to a two size, so it's
Mm.
quite big. From I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
and unless you're going to be looking at it with a microscope, you're not going to see
Right, right, right.
much of a difference. So,
Yeah, exactly.
but yeah. Anyway, but I'm getting sidetracked. So, yeah. So, if I may, one or two extra questions quickly before we end up.
Yeah.
Leading on from the camera, are you? But I think I can preempt the answer, but leading on from camera stuff, are you, and the type of work that you do with brands, your editing philosophy, are you sort of
Um,
replace the sky at all costs type of person, or are you just
no, no, no. I mean, I think I keep it somewhat like I try to keep the photo like as I took it. But I do like to like throw in a little bit of like I don't know what to call it, like some color boost or some contrast and a little bit of sharpness and that type of thing. Yeah, just to bring a little bit to life. But I'd say
yeah,
it's
of course. I
somewhat
mean, I think you obviously shoot raw most of the time,
yeah,
I would
yeah,
imagine. So you have to make some adjustments, but and color grading maybe add a personal touch, but you try
yeah.
to keep the image as natural, as true to what it was on set or on site.
Yeah,
You're not trying
absolutely.
to. yeah, completely change the context of what you captured.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I find like once you start to really, I mean, like, sure, if you're removing like a little thing here and there, like I may do that, especially if it's for like a catalog
Mm.
shoot. Yeah, I think once you start to get like a little wild, it like I think I mean, you see stuff with like AI these days, you can totally change a whole photograph, and at that point,
Yeah,
I'm
I mean
like,
that's a
yeah, yeah.
that's a can of worms right there.
Yeah, at that point, I'm like, it starts to become more like digital art than photography.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
I mean, I've had to. I think for me also, and that brings me a little bit back to my philosophy with this podcast series as well, keeping
yeah,
it as natural without editing as far as possible.
yeah, yeah.
To the imagery, I'm someone who likes to be out there making images and spending hours
Right.
behind the computer. I mean, it's necessary in the digital era because we don't send the film away to the lab to get it developed and um, have the darkroom work done.
Yeah,
Uh, so we do that ourselves now on the computer, but I don't like to spend days, inside behind a computer. I like to be out
yeah,
making images. So, and also from a my vision is I want to show people what it was like for me to be there. Obviously, you can edit it a little bit to add a bit of more of your emotion that you felt when you were there, but not change the whole context of the
yeah,
of
exactly.
the of the scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then leading on from that, so are you someone who sort of do you stick with the program that you know for editing, or are you also do you like to try different programs? You
Uh, Yeah, I pretty much stick to the Lightroom. Like
mm,
I'll use a little bit of Photoshop here and there. But yeah, I kind
yeah,
of so I think like similar to you, like I like to be behind the camera. And
mm,
I think as the last couple of years I'm trying to figure out like cool, how can I spend more time doing that?
yeah.
And maybe a little less time. Like there's certain jobs, just depending on what they are, I have like I have someone that I'll hire to edit stuff for me just
Okay,
because it's
cool.
pretty simple edit. It's nothing, there's like nothing crazy going on.
Mm,
But again, just kind of when I put like my CEO business hat on, I'm like, okay, cool. How can I like be out there shooting more and not like pushing sliders around the screen
yeah,
a
streamlining
little less.
the business.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
But
sure. Okay, cool.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I've always had a bit of a curiosity to try different editing programs. Um, having grown up in industry with Lightroom, obviously, Lightroom and Photoshop, but I found the last few years, especially having moving to Switzerland and having moving away from being a full-time photographer to having a
Yeah.
day job and pursuing it as a after hours or just as a hobby slash passion now,
Yeah.
which is quite strange because coming from having done it for more than a
Right.
decade professionally.
Right.
Um, having to literally optimize for
Yeah.
time and having
Yeah.
to say, listen, I would love to try, from A to Z different type of things, but at the end of the day, also just do what I know to do well. So if I have to do it, I can do it quickly
Yeah.
with great effectiveness, and then move on to the next project or onto
Yeah.
other stuff that needs to be done, rather than
Yeah.
spend hours just sort of going down, um, figuring out a new program, which I still find myself doing every now and again. But I've gotten better at reining myself in.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Um, yeah. Other than that, I think there's some questions or some other things that popped up, but I think I think that would be cool to keep for a next time.
Cool.
And I think the only thing that's left to ask is, are you a wine or a beer person?
Ooh, both.
Good
Yeah,
answer.
yeah. I think the wine coming from South Africa, we're like definitely spoiled. Um,
Especially Cape Town. I mean, being close to the
yeah,
wine region, and I mean Cape Town also around Cape Town, massive wine region.
yeah. Oh, it's crazy. I mean, we go back and my like wife essentially like fills my bag with as much wine as we can bring back. And I'm like,
Yeah,
what? Maybe like,
yeah.
yeah,
That's
and
our strategy as well.
okay, yeah, yeah. No, it's great. And then yeah, I mean, here in the States, there's so many options of like incredible beers to drink.
Yeah,
Uh, so yeah, definitely both. I think more beer in the summer, wine in the winter.
yeah.
Yeah,
I've had a bit of the same. Yeah, I mean, the the Swiss can definitely they can definitely drink their beer.
yeah,
So, and also as someone having lived and worked in the wine in the heart of the wine region in South Africa, that's been a bit of an adaptation. But I found myself also, yeah, I've really, especially like you say in summer, I started to enjoy the beers a bit
yeah,
more. So
yeah.
yeah.
Awesome.
So hopefully we if you ever do come this way, you can hopefully pop in and
Yeah,
we'll enjoy a beer together. Maybe both, maybe some wine
yeah,
wine as well.
yeah, definitely after a ski tour.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, other than that, yeah, just thanks again for joining me, taking the time. Really appreciate it. And until the next conversation,
Awesome. Yeah, well, thanks for having me and enjoy the conversation.
have a great week or rest of your day there. I'm going to go spend
Cool.
a couple of moments with the wife on the couch and head to
Nice.
bed.
Nice. Awesome. Cool. Thanks
Cool.
again, man.
Thanks, Scott. Very, very
All right.
cool. Check you next
Cheers.
time.